virtual visits can become a universal platform. So whereby virtual visits right now is, we're in the beginning stages of the project. I can see virtual visits definitely moving beyond and tying into the formal learning that we do within the department in the School Partnerships and Programs Division, within the Public Programs Division, and interacting on the formal side with teachers in a more active way, and having exchanges with teachers in kind of that virtual realm, as well as with participants in the public programs. Awareness building programs are fantastic, and what's a better way to build awareness than to reach out to people in their homes, in the environments where they're comfortable, and then draw them into the institution.
For a field museum, I think behind the scenes is critical because we don't ever see all of what's here at the Field Museum. And it's a lot more that's here, that's been here for many, many years.
There's not a lot of good curriculum about career-based science. And so being able to have the students see what you can do with science as a career helped fill that gap, as well as combining that with the regular educational philosophies in conservation and biodiversity. It all worked really well together.
The virtual visit, I think, helps them see that science is current and is something that's happening now and is happening here. I think they tend to think that science is something that happened 100 years ago and was in Europe and has no connection with them, or is happening in some huge university in California or Massachusetts. And this gives them the idea that it's happening here, and there's a lot of it happening, and it's happening for us less, a couple miles away.
Welcome. You guys are behind the scenes at the Field Museum. We are about 3 floors underground in a deep hole space between the Field Museum and Soldier Field. And down here we have the 26 million specimen that maybe you've heard that we have. When you come to the Field Museum, you can see less than 1% of that when you come with your school group or you come with your family. The rest of them are behind me in jars like this, behind the dioramas. But you're here today to really meet somebody who's pretty cool. His name is Bill Stanley. He's the collection manager here at the Field Museum. He manages a collection of over 200,000 mammals, everything from squirrels to lemurs to giraffes. It's pretty amazing. He also grew up in Kenya, which is pretty cool, and he's single-handedly responsible for all of the blood and guts you're going to see here today. So if you don't like it, you can blame him. But Bill, we're going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Joanna. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, that's me, Joanna Thompson. I'm the Digital Learning Specialist here in the Education Department at the Field Museum. And next to me is Bill Stanley, Collection Manager of Mammals at the Field Museum. And what you're watching is a virtual visit.
And why do we collect these things? Why do we prepare them? It's because scientists from all over the world study this material to figure out what makes this planet tick. And the data we collect with this specimen is written in this book and will be associated with this specimen forever. And scientists will be studying this specimen 500 years from now, when we're all dust in the wind, to keep their finger on the pulse of this planet.
Virtual Visits is a live broadcast into schools of a behind-the-scenes experience at the Field Museum. With our first pilot broadcasts, we focused on the story of a specimen, how it goes from being collected to going into the collection. The entire process of how a specimen gets into the museum collection is told, everything from cataloging to dissection to skeletal preparation. What we think is most important is that it shows how critical museum collections are to current scientific research. And it shows students science being done right here, right now.
Virtual visits fits into the digital learning experiences that we're developing right now and the general education programs that we have. in that we're really at a time where we're redeveloping and rethinking what a student experience actually means. We know there's many groups of students that we can reach that are outside of Chicago, and Virtual Visits is a platform that will really allow us to reach them in a way that we haven't before.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the skin off the specimen.
My students were oohing and ahhing over multiple parts during the Virtual Visits broadcast. They really liked the squirrel dissection. I think some of them were kind of grossed out, but in a good way.
Where I teach zoology this year, and it's the first year we've taught it, and I was just dissection, 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 dissection. It just fit in perfectly with what we were doing.
We've measured it. We've taken 5 measurements: total length, tail length, hind foot, length of the ear, and we've weighed it. It's a female, and we've recorded all this information in this book and given it a prep lab number. I'm now going to make an incision in the belly, and I'm going to cut the skin open. I'm careful not to break the abdominal wall.
My students really loved the dissection, and I think a lot of that has to go with how Bill handled it. I think they saw it. They were very interested in what he was doing. They asked me questions about him. They asked me questions about what he was doing and why, and they were interested in that.
So what I'm doing now is I'm using sawdust to make the skin more pliable and allow my fingers to grip the skin so that I can pull it off of the muscle.
The fact that he was cutting open a squirrel in front of them live, I mean the squirrel was dead, but it was live action, they thought that was just fantastic.
When I want to reinforce evolution, ecology, classification, and dissection, it just kind of ties all of that in together because it goes back to those topics of ecology and populations and classification that we've talked about previous.
So now I am getting my thumb and my finger between the leg and the skin on the other side, and I'm almost to the ankle. And when I get to that point, then I will use my scalpel to cut between the bones of the ankle and the 2 bones anterior to the ankle, which are the tibia and the fibula, just like you have.
A virtual visit could really fit into a lot of places in the curriculum. It could be part of anatomy, it could be conservation, it could be cause and effect studies, it could be biodiversity. It really fits in everywhere.
And of course, the students love seeing the beetle. Everybody loves the Beatles, and that was just, the music was great with it. It was just sort of it was a nice little step away from the squirrel, which is actually sort of intense at points.
These are the same beetles that are used in museums around the world. So what you see here is the adult in the upper left, and then the little caterpillar things are the larvae, and it's the larvae that do most of the feeding. Notice there are small larvae and big larvae. This time lapse you're seeing took about 24 hours. So this specimen was put in, much like the one that you saw here, and cleaned in a day.
They loved the beetles, seeing these bugs just with the time-lapse photography take the skeleton down to nothing.
My students really enjoyed the one-on-one dialogue with scientists. It was one of their favorite parts to the Virtual Visits broadcast.
Okay, I have 2 questions from my students. They want to know, 1, why do we need to preserve these squirrels if we can find fresh roadkill every day? And 2, are there other types of animals that go through this similar process?
My students' eyes lit up in the virtual visit at 2 areas. 1, being able to talk to a scientist, and 2, seeing the skinning. because they had questions, and they asked, can we really ask the questions? It's like, yes, we can either ask it or type it in.
Yes, we skin raccoons, we skin minks, we preserve rabbits the same way. So there are lots of other mammals that go through this process.
For middle school students, that interactivity was that getting to see themselves on the webcam. They thought that was fantastic. Being able to ask a question to a scientist and get a direct answer back was really great, was really important for them.
To be on Welcome George Washington School.
Bill was great. He was very accessible. They were very interested in why he was a scientist, if he enjoyed his job. I found that an interesting question. They want to know why he went into science. Very accessible, made it all seem very human.
If the animal gets to be about the size of a coyote, then what we would do is we would tan the skin using a commercial technique, because the skin would run the chance of rotting if we just preserved it with the cotton.
One of the questions that the students wanted to know was, why didn't he have gloves? You know, is the squirrel diseased? But the question was being typed in as my student wanted to know the answer, so they were able to see that other students wanted to know the same thing.
Those of you that might be interested in the coloration of the skin in summer versus winter could use this skin, but those of you that might be interested in the muscle tracts or the stomach contents would require a pickled specimen.
Bill Stanley was really great during the Virtual Visits broadcast. Just the way he engaged the students, it was very much on their level. He used a lot of analogies to help explain things to my students.
Now at this point, the two legs and the tail are being pulled out, and the skin is coming off around the back, and I will continue to pull this skin inside out over its head, like I pull a t-shirt off over my head inside out. I'll cut the bones at the wrists, the cartilage at the ears, and the nose, and I will have the skin inside out in one hand and the carcass in the other.
After experiencing the virtual visit, the kids are much more excited about the Field Museum. They're much more interested in coming here. They've talked about coming on their own, which is always nice when you see a boy and a girl, boyfriend and girlfriend who want to come here, and getting the museum pass from the library and coming down here on their own when they have the opportunity.
Virtual Visits is more than squirrels. We've tried to create a program model that could fit any number of disciplines and research. This program has the potential to scale that is limited only by the number of questions Field Museum scientists are asking.